One thing that Hitler's rise to power taught us is that democracy has its drawbacks. After all, Hitler was perfectly democratically elected in free and fair elections and became leader of Germany completely legally, right? Well, not really, no. Hitler was head of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. But in the 5 elections that they fought between 1928 and March 1933, they never got more than 44% of the votes. And yet, in November 1933, they were the only party represented in Parliament. How did that happen? We have to go back a year to the election of November 1932. This was actually the second election of that year because democracy was a new thing in Germany and things weren't going very well. People were beginning to get a little bit fed up of having to vote all the time, but most interestingly, they seemed to be a bit disappointed with the Nazi Party. All the same, the Nazis had more seats than any other party in the Reichstag, and so, despite the best efforts of President Hindenburg, Adolf Hitler became head of government in a coalition. In February 1933, the Reichstag building caught fire. To this day, nobody knows for sure exactly who started it, but the Nazis blamed a communist and then blamed the Communist Party. They were then able to issue a decree which effectively put the nation in a state of emergency and gave the government free rein to persecute members of the Communist Party and, in fact, anybody they wanted to. So far, so legal. Or not. According to some historians, the decree was unconstitutional. The president hadn't actually ruled that there was a serious threat to public order, and the decree was to remain in force until further notice. There was no specific time limit attached to it. This was very, very serious because it suspended many basic constitutional rights. And so to March, the last time in the Weimar Republic that there was an election at which more than one party took part. However, it can't really be said to be free and fair. The decree was in force and the Nazis were helpfully encouraging people to vote the right way. Most visibly, members of the SA and the SS, the paramilitaries of the Nazi Party, were helping police to keep the peace. The Nazis had confidently expected to win an absolute majority. Amazingly, they didn't. They just missed. Out of 647 seats, the Nazis got 288. But not to worry. Remember that possibly illegal decree? That made things a lot simpler. It meant that the Nazis were able to simply say that the seats won by the Communist Party didn't count. This left only 566 seats, giving the Nazis just about 50%, and so they could rule with the help of their good friends, the German nationalists. The next stage in the plan was an enabling act. This is a type of law which allows Parliament to temporarily grant government certain emergency powers. In this case, the Nazis were hoping for an enabling act which would, for a period of 6 months, allow them, among other things, to pass laws that didn't even have to be constitutional. There was just one hurdle they had to get over. In order for an enabling act to pass, at least 2/3 of the Reichstag had to be present for the vote, and the vote had to pass with a 2/3 majority. So Hitler needed the support of at least 2 other parties, the Centre Party and the Bavarian People's Party. But the opposition could still have scuppered this vote. The Social Democrat and Communist parties were strictly against the idea, and if they and only 15 other representatives had stayed away, the debate would have been inchoate. In fact, all of the Communists and many of the Social Democrats were in prison at the time. So, before the debate, the Nazis pushed through a small change to parliamentary procedure. Now, any delegate that was absent without leave was deemed officially to be present. And then, the Nazis simply declared that all those Communists and Social Democrats that were in prison were absent without leave. They then set about intimidating members of the Centre and Bavarian People's Parties, telling them that if they didn't vote for the Enabling Act, they and their families would be murdered. And just to make absolutely certain, they even posted members of the SA inside the debating chamber itself. Hitler got his 2/3 majority. The Enabling Act was passed, and nothing could stand in the way of the Nazi Party. All the other parties were effectively forced to disband. A new law came into effect which made it impossible to found any new political parties, and in November of that year fresh elections were held in true totalitarian style, with only one option on the ballot paper. It's a good example to explain why translators are so expensive.